When people talk about monsters, they usually think of the shadows that lurk in the dark. Creatures with claws, fangs, and glowing eyes. But sometimes monsters don't hide in the darkness. Sometimes they sit right in the daylight, smiling at you and waiting for you to make a choice. This is the story of BloodMoney, a game that begins with a pastel art style, a cheerful melody, and a friendly man sitting at a roadside booth. His name is Harvey Harrington.
Hey there! My name is Harvey Harrington, and welcome to my booth! Each time you click me, I'll give you $1. Sounds like a sweet deal, doesn't it?
And at first glance, Harvey doesn't look like a monster at all. He looks kind, helpful. He looks human. His offer is simple. 1 click equals $1. Every click you make on him puts money in your pocket. And right away, the stakes are set. You, the player, are desperate. The doctor has told you that you're suffering from a fatal condition. The operation to save your life costs $25,000. Without it, you won't survive. So, imagine driving down a lonely road, despair weighing on your shoulders, and suddenly seeing this man at a booth. Harvey isn't asking for much. Just a click. Just a second of your time. And in return, $1 closer to survival. At first, it feels like salvation. The art style is soft, playful. The music is light. Harvey encourages you with a smile. You're making my day with these clicks. His words radiate warmth. He feels like someone rooting for you, someone who wants you to win. But here's the question that lingers in the air: is Harvey really saving you? Or are you about to step into something far darker? Because the truth is, BloodMoney isn't a game about survival. It's a game about temptation, about greed, about cruelty. It isn't Harvey you should be afraid of. It's yourself. And as the minutes tick by, the real test begins. At first, the game feels almost silly, like any other clicker game you've played before. Harvey stands there smiling, and every click you give him fills your pocket with a little bit more hope. The counter ticks upward, and in those early minutes, it feels almost wholesome. Then you notice the shop button glowing. Harvey himself tells you, "Oh look, there's something new to buy." And curiosity leads you to open the shop. The very first item available is a feather. Cheap, light-hearted, and seemingly harmless. Buy it, and suddenly your earnings double. Now every click isn't worth just $1. It's 2. The feather brushes against Harvey, and he laughs. That tickles. It's playful, innocent. Nothing feels wrong here. You're still clicking, still smiling, still moving toward your goal. But then the shop glows again. And this time, the next item isn't so harmless. It's a needle. Sharper, colder. A tool not of play, but of pain. You hesitate for a moment. Maybe you don't want to buy it. But the temptation is clear. If the feather doubled your profit, what will the needle do? You buy. And now your clicks are worth $4 each. But the mood shifts. Harvey winces. Okay, that's not tickling anymore. The music still plays, the pastel colors remain, but something inside you knows that the line has been crossed. This is the moment BloodMoney reveals its true nature. Because from here, the pattern is set: the more pain you inflict, the greater the reward. Next comes the hammer. It's brutal. With every click, Harvey stutters, terrified. He begs you not to use it. But at the same time, the cash multiplies. Then the scissors. Graphic, horrifying. You cut out Harvey's eye, and the game doesn't flinch. The money counter climbs, but so does the pit in your stomach. And here's where we, as players, face a choice: do we stop? Or do we keep going? It's important to remember, the game never forces you to buy these items. It doesn't push your hand. The feather alone is enough, if you have the patience, to reach $25,000. But how many players really sit there, clicking thousands upon thousands of times, just to reach the end without harm? Most don't. Most give in. Because the game whispers to you, it's faster this way, it's just a game. He's not real. But that whisper grows louder with every new item, every doubling of your profit. It becomes harder and harder to resist. And yet, with every choice, Harvey becomes less of a cheerful man and more of a broken victim. His dialogue changes. His smile fades. He begins calling you names: monster, sadist. He reminds you that he has a wife, a son, a life beyond this booth. And still, the counter rises. This is the spiral of BloodMoney. A downward slope that looks optional but feels inevitable. 1 click at a time, you're shown the cost of your greed. 1 click at a time, Harvey loses his humanity, while you lose a piece of yours. So let me ask you this: if you were the one playing, how long would you have lasted with just the feather? Would you resist the hammer, the scissors? Or would you convince yourself that Harvey isn't real enough for it to matter? Because whether you realize it or not, every click is less about Harvey and more about you. This is where BloodMoney stops being a quirky clicker game and starts becoming a mirror. Not a mirror of Harvey, but of the player sitting behind the screen. Because here's the truth, Harvey isn't the one being tested. You are. Think about it. At every stage, the game gives you an option. You could grind it out with the feather and take the so-called moral high ground. But the developers knew most people wouldn't. Why? Because human nature almost guarantees it. We are wired for shortcuts, for efficiency, for results with the least effort. And BloodMoney exploits that instinct perfectly. With each new weapon, it offers you a deal. A little more pain for a lot more gain. And most players accept it without hesitation. But here's the disturbing part. Harvey isn't silent. He talks to you. He begs. He reminds you of his family, his wife, his son Toby. He makes it abundantly clear that he doesn't want this. He tells you that what you're doing is wrong. And yet, most people keep clicking anyway. Why? Is it because players truly believe Harvey isn't real, so his words don't matter? Is it because the goal, the $25,000, becomes more important than the man? Or is it something darker, the curiosity of seeing how far the suffering can go? This is the brilliance of BloodMoney. It isn't about Harvey's pain. It's about how we justify causing that pain. And the justifications come quickly, don't they? It's just a game. I need to see all the endings. Everyone else is doing it. But what those excuses really reveal is how easily empathy erodes when there are no consequences. When there's no one in the room to judge us. When the victim is digital, faceless, disposable. And yet, Harvey isn't faceless, is he? He looks at you. He speaks to you. He begs you to stop. The more you hurt him, the more real he feels. Almost too real. And that's what makes this game so uncomfortable. Because we can sit here and say, he's not real, so it doesn't matter. But at the same time, we cry when a movie character dies. We cheer when a fictional hero wins. We mourn when a show ends. If we can feel all that for imaginary people on a screen, then why is Harvey any different? Here's a question for you. If someone streamed themselves torturing Harvey in the game, would you watch? Would you laugh? Or would you feel disgusted? And if the answer is disgust, then why doesn't that same feeling stop you when you're the one clicking the mouse? That's the paradox at the heart of BloodMoney. It makes you realize just how thin the line is between game, between reality, and play, cruelty, and maybe, just maybe, it forces you to ask yourself, when no one's watching, who are you really? Because Harvey may be the one bleeding, but the person truly exposed is the player. Every choice in BloodMoney pushes Harvey toward one of 4 possible outcomes. But here's the truth. The game never really gives you a good ending. It only reflects the weight of what you've already done. The bad ending, this is the one most players stumble into on their first run. You follow the instructions exactly. You buy every single upgrade. Feather, hammer, scissors, each doubling your profit. You're so close to your goal of 25,000, but temptation gets the better of you. You just had to buy the gun, didn't you? At first, Harvey pleads with you. Please don't, please. You've already taken enough. Haven't you hurt me enough? But you do it anyway. You pull the trigger. The gunshot echoes, and Harvey collapses. You stand there, pockets heavy with BloodMoney. And what for? That operation you were supposedly saving for wasn't even life-threatening. It wasn't survival. It was just greed. So you climb into your minivan, racks of ill, earned cash in the back, and drive off into the sunset. Not a hero, but a criminal running from the police. That's the bad ending. Profit at the cost of everything human. But there is another way. If you refuse the shortcuts, if you avoid the hammer, the scissors, and the gun, you can actually reach 25,000 with just the needle. It's slower, yes, but it keeps your hands clean. In this ending, Harvey is still alive. He even waves goodbye as you walk away. You got the money you needed, you paid for your surgery, and for once, you left without causing permanent damage. It feels almost refreshing, doesn't it? Like maybe you can still win without bloodshed. This is the closest thing BloodMoney has to a good ending. And then, there's the most deceptive path, the normal ending. If you play as usual and stop buying items after you get the scissors, the game takes a darker turn. Because scissors are no longer harmless. They let you mutilate Harvey, his eye, his body. Each click is another scar. When you finally hit 25,000, Harvey doesn't just wave you off. He takes you to court. And this is brutal. You leave his broken body at the stall. You collect your reward, you even get the operation. But then you're dragged into a courtroom, face to face with Harvey Harrington. He's unrecognizable, scarred beyond belief, but his gaze pierces you. The evidence is overwhelming. Every click is counted against you. And it all ends with one cold truth: mutilation, cruelty, and torture cannot be erased with money. This ending doesn't just punish your character, it punishes you for believing you could escape responsibility. Now comes the rarest outcome, the one most people never see. It only happens when you use the knife. You stab Harvey again and again until finally he snaps. The screen shakes, his voice booms. Click like your life depends on it. If you keep clicking, you regain control. But if you stop, Harvey takes over. The game ends with a real game over screen, the only true fail state in BloodMoney. For once, the victim fights back, and it's terrifying. When you step back, you start to see the pattern. None of these outcomes can be called good. Because the truth is, the endings aren't about Harvey at all. They're about you. They're about how far you were willing to go. Whether you chose mercy, despair, corruption, or death, the game records not Harvey's story, but your reflection. And that's why BloodMoney lingers long after you close it. Because it never lets you pretend you were just playing a game. It forces you to sit with the choices you made, and to ask yourself a question you can't easily answer. What kind of person am I when no one else is watching? Up until now, most of the focus has been on Harvey himself, his body, his pain, his voice. But BloodMoney doesn't stop there. Just when you think you've gotten used to clicking, when you've convinced yourself it's only him, the game brings someone else into the picture. Harvey starts talking about his wife, Uni, and his son, Toby. At first, it feels like just background detail, a way to make him sound more human. But as the game drags on, those names come back again and again. Harvey tells you that Uni is waiting for him, that Toby is just a little boy who needs his father. He describes them like they're sitting in the next room, watching, waiting. And suddenly, the stakes shift. You're not just hurting Harvey anymore. You're hurting a family. Every click isn't just pain on his skin. It's another meal Uni has to serve alone. Another night Toby goes to bed without his dad. This is one of the cruelest tricks the game pulls. It takes something already uncomfortable and multiplies it. Because now, when Harvey pleads, he's not just begging for himself. He's begging for the people he loves. And for many players, that's where the guilt cuts deepest. Some try to ignore it. They tell themselves it's just writing, just flavor text, just another line in the code. But the more you listen, the harder it becomes to shake the feeling that you're dragging an entire family into this cycle of cruelty. And here's the haunting part. You never see Uni or Toby. They don't appear on the screen. They're never rendered as characters. They exist only through Harvey's words, which makes them more powerful, not less. Because your mind fills in the blanks. You picture them yourself. You imagine the faces of a wife and child waiting at home. And those images, whatever you conjure, stay with you long after the game ends. This is where BloodMoney stops feeling like just a test of curiosity or greed. It starts feeling like a commentary on collateral damage. That suffering doesn't exist in isolation. That every action, even when aimed at one person, ripples outward into the lives of others. And Harvey's tragedy becomes bigger than just Harvey. It becomes the tragedy of anyone whose pain is dismissed, ignored, or turned into entertainment, while the people who depend on them quietly bear the cost. If BloodMoney left players unsettled, its spiritual follow-up, the Human Expenditure Project, pushes things even further. Where the first game tested how far you'd go for money, the sequel asks something far darker. What if a person's life was reduced to a resource you had to manage? At first glance, it almost feels like a parody of something wholesome. The mechanics are reminiscent of games like The Sims or even a Tamagotchi. You're tasked with keeping Harvey alive. His survival is broken down into simple meters: hunger, mood, health. Feed him, entertain him, keep him functioning. On paper, it sounds lighthearted, like you're nurturing a digital pet. But very quickly, the illusion shatters. Feeding Harvey isn't just clicking on food. It's watching him chew stale bread with a blank, exhausted stare. Maintaining his mood isn't about cute toys or cheerful minigames. It's forcing him through activities designed to wring out every ounce of his humanity. The meters don't measure fun, they measure compliance. And just like in BloodMoney, there's always a shortcut. If Harvey's hunger bar is dropping too quickly, you can buy cheap, rotten food. If his mood is too low, you can inject chemicals to simulate happiness. The systems tempt you to abandon empathy in favor of efficiency, pushing you toward choices that might work in-game but eat away at Harvey's dignity. This is the horror of the Human Expenditure Project. It disguises cruelty as caretaking. The player thinks they're helping, but in reality, they're micromanaging a man's suffering, treating his life like a spreadsheet. It's no longer about the spectacle of violence, but about the quiet, grinding oppression of turning someone into a system to be optimized. And that's what makes this sequel feel even heavier than BloodMoney. In the first game, Harvey was aware. He could cry, plead, curse at you. In the sequel, his suffering is flattened into numbers, percentages, and meters. It's dehumanization in its purest form. Now, let's pause and ask, which is worse? Is it more horrific when Harvey screams, begs, and fights back? Or when the game strips all of that away, leaving only silent bars that tick down as you fail to meet them? Is raw pain more haunting, or is it the cold reduction of a human life into statistics? This is the genius, and the cruelty, of these games. They don't just shock you in the moment. They make you sit with those questions long after you've put the controller down. And by the end of the human expenditure project, money wasn't the end of Harvey's story. It was just the beginning of his transformation. From a man into a system, a commodity, a reflection of how far players are willing to go when empathy is put to the test. By this point, the story of BloodMoney and its sequel has given us a lot to think about. But the real weight of these games isn't just in Harvey's suffering. It's in the questions they leave us with. Questions that push us out of the screen and into philosophy. So let's step back for a moment. When players hurt Harvey, they often justify it by saying, he's not real. He's just pixels on a screen. And technically that's true. Harvey isn't flesh and blood. He can't actually feel pain. But here's the haunting paradox. If he isn't real, why do players feel guilt? Why do they hesitate before clicking? Why do some walk away from the game disturbed, even shaken? This leads us to one of the central philosophical questions of digital media. Does simulated suffering matter? On the surface, you might say no, it's harmless entertainment. But the very act of hesitation, that flicker of empathy, suggests something deeper. It suggests that we're wired to respond to suffering, whether it's real or virtual. That empathy, once triggered, doesn't care if the source is biological or artificial. And then comes the darker theory. Maybe the game isn't about Harvey at all. Maybe it's about you. About testing the boundaries of your morality in a safe environment, where no real consequences exist. After all, how you treat Harvey is invisible to the outside world. Nobody knows whether you chose the feather or the scissors. It's just between you and the screen. So here's the uncomfortable question. If your choices when nobody is watching reveal who you really are, then what does your playthrough of BloodMoney say about you? Is it fair to say that indulging in cruelty in a game is meaningless? Or does it hint at something deeper about how we view power, control, and the lives of others? Real or not? This is where the game transforms from an experience into a thought experiment. It asks us to reflect on our own morality, not just in games, but in life. Because while Harvey isn't real, the choices we make in relation to him, our willingness to ignore his pain, or to exploit him for efficiency, mirror choices we see in the real world. Choices about workers, about strangers, about anyone whose suffering is easy to overlook. And that's why Harvey lingers in the mind. Not because he bleeds, but because he makes us question what our empathy is truly worth when tested. And so, we arrive at the end. We've seen his kindness warped into cruelty. We've examined every ending, every consequence, and even the terrifying possibilities that a sequel might bring. But before we close the book on BloodMoney, let's leave with one final question. Because if this story teaches us anything, it's that monsters don't always come from shadows. Sometimes they appear in the most ordinary places. In a pastel-colored clicker game, in a booth on the side of the road, or even in the decisions we make when we think nobody's watching. The real horror of BloodMoney isn't Harvey's suffering, it's the player's willingness to cause it. It's the quiet, undeniable truth that even in a fictional space, cruelty can feel tempting, easy, justified. And that brings us here. If a character made of pixels can evoke guilt, hesitation, or even shame, then doesn't that prove something about the reality of his suffering? Maybe not in flesh, but in meaning. Because if you felt something while playing, or even while listening to this story, then on some level, Harvey was real. When the screen fades to black and the game is over, which is worse? The monster sitting in the booth, or the one holding the mouse? Think about that. And with that, this has been the complete breakdown of BloodMoney. Thank you for staying until the very end. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel and comment. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Harvey was just a vessel for gameplay, or something more? And which ending do you believe is the true canon ending? The one where you walk away rich, or the one where you refuse the cycle altogether, even if it means losing everything? Drop your theories below, and let's keep this conversation alive. Until next time, and be careful what you click on.